I know a lot of people, they think of their past as like some kind of penance, or like they were put here as purgatory or something like that, or they're working out some kind of karma and things like that. But when you look at the past, I always tell people your past is kind of your proving ground for your superpower, because once you accomplish whatever it is you're going to accomplish, you're going to now take that out into the world and hopefully share with other people.
When the trauma is showing its head, it can be very ugly. And so I feel like understanding that there is a demon, quote unquote, in us that can be resembling trauma. It's not in the way of, some entity, but it's just that darkness, that shadow that we continue to carry with ourselves that can be so damaging in many ways, especially if we don't yet know about it, if we don't recognize it or are aware of it.
Nothing is ever permanent. There's only one constant in the known universe: change. So you can either change or you can let the universe change you, because something's going to move you. Something's going to happen. You're not going to stay stuck in that spot.
We need to learn to ground, self-regulation. We call it interoception. And that comes from somatic work. So first, people need to be more comfortable with being inside and learning about what's going on when we have this body tension. What places maybe are really right now stagnant or dark, or have a lot of anxiety.
Welcome to the Brain Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Porter. Please join us on our mission to better a billion brains. Enjoy the episode and remember to share it with your family and friends.
Hello, welcome back to the Brain Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Porter, and I have a very special guest with us today. We're talking about mental health and how we can use our brain, our body, our senses. Actually, we're going to learn a little bit about sacred medicine and all these things. I'm going to welcome to the show, Alisa. Tell us a little bit about what started your journey and what got you into mental health and actually into really just using your brain, your mind, your body, your spirit, all of these things to help maximize your life experience, and how can the Brain Fitness Network learn more about you?
Well, thank you so much for having me over. It's an honor for sure. I'm currently I'm a trauma specialist, and my journey started back in Russia. And when I moved to the United States at 18 years old, I was very young. And I feel like that transition, as well as we now know how transgenerational trauma also plays a part. And again, coming from Soviet Union, I'm actually Soviet baby, was born and raised there initially before it fell apart. So I feel like there was a lot of factors leading me to kind of working on my own traumatic experiences, which ultimately led me to be of assistance to people who may be struggling. And I feel like trauma is a very difficult concept for a lot of people, because we always consider trauma to be something so grand, so big, but in reality we all had traumatic experiences that impacted us. And so I feel like understanding how to recognize that, how to navigate that in the future, how to seek help. And there's so many different options available for different people, and one approach doesn't fit all. That's why, again, just like you mentioned, utilizing all of these different facets of life that we have, so that we can bring that comprehensive kind of treatment to trauma as we know it. And so going through my own healing process and navigating that, and also getting education in mental health, that's what ultimately kind of I want to figure out what was going on with me. And so then that became my purpose, my life's mission, so to say.
Yeah.
So yeah,
a lot of people think about trauma just as a physical experience. We know our cells will go into what's called the cell danger response, and they won't respirate, they need to breathe, we need to have mitochondrial health and all of these things. But you brought spirituality into the equation. So tell us a little bit about how spirituality became a part of this answer that you were seeking.
Yeah, so for me, spirituality, I would say it's number one thing, because looking at what I had to go through from just a human perspective was very limiting. Because I feel like when we look at it, and there's so many things that can help, that can happen with people, right, that we go through, and it's hard to make sense of why it's happening to me, why it's happening now. Did I do something wrong? I feel like a lot of people internalize that, and especially when we just seek the answers from the perspective of the mind, or again, the body, right? Because there's different type of injuries that we can go through. Even medical injury right now, it's another traumatic experience that a lot of people are struggling with. So spirituality is allowing people to look at trauma from much broader perspective, because we don't question. If we just think as a human, right, I will have probably no answer for the reason of why it's happening to me. If I take this broader stance and I begin to trust that nature that's within me right now, that's breathing my body, that's digesting my food, right? We don't question those things when we eat, when we go to the bathroom, when we have to perform all sorts of ways, we don't think how it's all playing within ourselves, right? So we trust this process. And I feel like trusting on a bigger scale as well when it comes to trauma, it's one of the major tools that we can use for ourselves, because then we begin to trust this process rather than trying to resist it or question it. And that allows us to find a different meaning to our traumatic experiences. And it's a beautiful experience once we surrender into this kind of power that we have inside, this energy, right? We're all energy. And so that becomes a very therapeutic and healing process.
Right. I know a lot of people, they think of their past as like some kind of penance, or like they were put here as purgatory or something like that, or they're working out some kind of karma and things like that. But you talk about fulfillment. So when you look at the past, I always tell people your past is kind of your proving ground for your superpower, because once you accomplish whatever it is you're going to accomplish, you're going to now take that out into the world and hopefully share with other people. How did you find fulfillment? And tell me a little bit about your journey.
Well, starting with, I feel like mind is the first thing we have to work on, and that's where cognitive behavioral therapy allows us to start changing these neural pathways that we have in our brain as well. Because again, we're creatures of habits, and I feel like navigating it from that perspective, we find ourselves trapped in the thoughts that are consistently repeating itself, right? So I feel like getting out of that and begin to see new ways of thinking, begin to see new ways of perceiving information that's coming in, what happened to us. So first I did a very big cleansing of my mind. So that was all of the music that ever triggered all of this, all the emotions, experiences, that had to go. I started reading a lot of books. I love this quote I always cited from Albert Einstein: we can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Number one, cleansing that and giving yourselves an opportunity to see situations or a life from a different perspective. That was number one. That was a great cleansing, which allowed me to see how much chaos I've had in my own head, right? And what was going on, why I was perceiving things in such a way. And that brought self-awareness. And I feel like being aware of what's going on internally is number one thing. And then we're able to do something with that. But then my journey brought me to sacred medicine work as well. It's a plant medicine, and I've dealt with ayahuasca since 2017. And that was a very impactful journey. I actually studied shamanism as well. For me, that was something so empowering. And again, it doesn't contradict. I can't say that I'm religious, but I feel like there's always wisdom in all of the religions that exist. And there's always that common thread that goes through all of them. So I feel like understanding the essence of the idea of that philosophy was something so empowering, rather than being in this one kind of stance of how I perceive my spirituality. So sacred medicines allowed me to open my consciousness up to a lot of different ways in how we can navigate our own energy and healing and spirituality internally. And that was empowering. That gave me a lot of solutions to those problems I was seeking kind of help with. And yeah, that was something that I still actually go with this practice because it's so powerful. It's just, we don't need the medicine if we feel good. And I feel like, again, there's always that kind of way that people can start to rely on this a little bit more. But naturally, that gave me a tremendous amount of healing in ways that I would never expect. I actually I was saying that the very first time I had the 3 ceremonies back to back, and I called it an exorcism. So it's like, I know there is nothing in me that's out there, that's something evil or whatever. But when the trauma is showing its head, it can be very ugly. And so I feel like understanding that there is a demon, quote unquote, in us that can be resembling trauma. It's not in the way of, some entity, but it's just that darkness, that shadow that we continue to carry with ourselves that can be so damaging in many ways, especially if we don't yet know about it, if we don't recognize it or are aware of it. And so that was one of the most profound experiences I've had.
Yeah. I tell people we have a life of rituals. Whether we believe it or not, we get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we do our hair, we do our makeup, whatever we're doing, it's all ritualistic. And if something gets out of order, we get agitated and upset. But some people get addicted to these negative feelings, these negative expressions, even though they don't want to. It seems counterintuitive. So how did you find peace by changing those rituals?
Well, number one, just like you've mentioned, I love how you said that, right, about this rituals of brushing teeth, doing all that. I feel like we also have to have rituals to turning inwards. And that's where the spirit lives, because it's very easy to get sidetracked with our minds. It's very easily influenced by everything, day-to-day operations, people, media, TV. And I feel like dedicating time, whether it's meditation, prayer, whether it's going to your sacred space, maybe it's nature, right? Whatever that ritual can be, I feel like it's imperative to have that every single day. and making sure that we do dedicate time for that. And that's what brings fulfillment, because we're able to kind of work on the scale of, okay, the human kind of experiences with materialistic needs and everything that we want or desire or, even need at the moment. But I feel like finding this serenity and peace internally without actually achieving those goals, that's a great place to start. And maybe it's with the gratitude practice, which I love dearly, because I feel like we're never grateful enough. I mean, we're all kind of spoiled brats because we're never really sit there consistently and consciously and go over things that we actually have. And I feel like we're always in this strive for more. And so this practice of going inwards and trying to find this balance internally and tuning to this consciousness to experience the essence of what's driving this sacred vessel, what's moving this body. For me, that's number one thing. And maybe I've missed a very few for the last couple of years, but that's something that I try to do, just like I'm brushing my teeth. And I feel like if we take it as such, if I say, if I have the strength and time to go and brush my teeth at night before I go to bed, I have to sit down at least for a few minutes, even if I can do the whole session, just a few minutes. And for me, I'm on my knees next to my altar, and that's the most powerful experience of day-to-day practice for me.
That's great. Yeah, a good friend of mine, Rod Hairston out of Austin, he says, there is no there. Everybody's wanting to get there, so they want to have a goal, they want to achieve something. Of course, that's the brain telling them, hey, I need that norepinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol, to get me motivated in the morning or in the evening or whatever you're doing. But it's to find that peace, to find that ability. So when we talk about crisis, a lot of people, they're living their life from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. They don't understand that if there's a problem, there is a solution. And usually it's within them, right? And you said it earlier that we're all energy. And that energy is broadcasting around us. Actually, in science, we know it's infrared light. We actually are broadcasting codes to our cells and to the environment. And those codes are actually bringing to us whatever it is that we're perceiving, believing, achieving, whatever those things are. And it's happening with or without our awareness. So how do you work with people who are in that crisis mode? It's on autopilot because, Bruce Lipton said 95% of our life is run by our subconscious mind. So we let this part of our mind run our life. And if we don't settle, like you said, settle down, relax, even for a minute or two, of course, most people listen to this use brain tap. So we bring energy to the brain so they can start thinking, acting, and responding differently. But what did you find when you're working with these people in crisis? How do you get them to shift the gears? Because once they get into that pattern, it's almost like the grooves on a record. They just get in that groove and they don't know how to get out of that groove. What do you recommend? What are some of the techniques maybe that you can share?
Right. So I feel like to start, it's a great point too, because a lot of times when we're in crisis situation, we'll go into the sympathetic dominance where we can't see anything else but that threat response, right? We see this threat in front of us and it doesn't matter what I say. And I can say all of the spiritual things I can imagine. It's not going to make a difference because they're literally in survival mode. I always kind of make this metaphor of you have a lion sitting next to you in your room, and talking about spirituality when you have a lion that's about to eat you is nearly impossible. So first of all, we need to learn to ground self-regulation. We call it interoception. And that comes from somatic work. So first, people need to be more comfortable with being inside and learning about what's going on when we have this body tension, what places maybe are really right now stagnant or dark or, have a lot of anxiety. And so number one is that somatic grounding. First, I want to guide them into learning to relax their physiology, because now we know we cannot have anxiety or PTSD symptoms in relaxed physiology. The stress we experience, the kind of that sympathetic dominance, it reflects itself into our body being very tense and getting all rigid. So allowing ourselves to actually go in, relax all of it, and try to stay present by disconnecting from the mind, because naturally stress is us thinking stressful thoughts, and then our body responds in accordance to that. So if we learn this somatic grounding, we go in and begin to learn to be present in this time and space rather than being disassociated, which is a normal response to any crisis or, again, traumatic experiences. That is number one. So we'll learn a variety of techniques, working with the pelvic floor muscles, because a lot of times we have a lot of energy stuck in there. With our shoulders, a lot of people complain. And anybody who comes to me with PTSD, I can say right away, they probably have a lot of tension in their neck and their shoulders, right? All of this part, and probably the rest of the body too. A lot of other health problems can also indicate that they've had that tremendous amount of stress or trauma happening in their lives and to them. So I feel like first and foremost is learning to be present so that they know how they can ground themselves even in the presence of the trigger that they may experience at this time. So grounding physiological work comes first before we're able to attune to the mind, because again, when we're in sympathetic dominance, our neurocortical function goes down, so we can't even make proper decisions or we cannot see other perspective. But when we ground, and actually if we do that for 3 or 5 minutes, people begin to see a very different perspective to the situation they're dealing with. And it's phenomenal to see how people can find their own answers to the problem by just going in and relaxing their body parts.
Yeah. Well, can you kind of take us through maybe a little exercise? What would you tell somebody if I was a friend of yours and I said, hey, I'm going through some crisis right now? What would you instruct me to do at this moment?
Right. So number one, take a seat, right? Take a seat or find a comfortable position and begin to turn inwards. Closing the eyes is one of the things because our visual cortex takes in a lot of information. If we close it, we're able to dive inwards a little more. Then beginning to be aware of the thoughts that come and go and starting to see them as an observer. Allow the thoughts to kind of dissociate from them rather than taking them as reality. And then taking an elevator down from your head through your neck and through your shoulders and begin to scan those areas. And the moment people begin to take that elevator down and begin to relax and breathe into it, maybe even tensing and relaxing it even more, we call it progressive muscle relaxation, very, very useful technique for a lot of people. So, and going down and beginning to go through different parts of the chest area, allowing the heart to open up. And people usually feel a lot of energy with the heart space as well when they begin to expand it with breath work. And maybe shifting. Visualization is also a big part of what I do with people, because a lot of people have this kind of innate ability for creative, inspirational kind of thing. So if they're allowing themselves to even visualize the energy moving outwards, that also can be a very, very beautiful experience for them to create their own space, their sanctuary, so to say, not just within their body, but a little bit on the outside. The more they feel comfortable, because I know a lot of people do not want to kind of give away their thoughts or their problems that need their attention. So if they're able to just put it next to them, but not too far, it still gives them that place to breathe while they can still reach and grab for what they want if they need it in the moment. And so grounding downwards from the heart into the hips and into the pelvic floor, grounding, finding that point of contact between the pelvis and the chair or a couch, whatever they're sitting, and then grounding the feet into the floor as well. And so when they have those few points of contact with, in this present time and space, with the floor, with the ground, whatever they are, they allow themselves to really be inwards and be within their body rather than spiraling into this, chaotic kind of scenery that they created probably about the future that never happened yet or the past that we can't do anything about. And so this present moment can be very healing.
Yeah, I know music is super important. I know in learning, they have something called the Mozart effect. They can just play this music in the background while kids are learning and they get smarter. And you had said early on that you had to get rid of all this music that was causing triggers and chaotic thinking. What's your views on music and how can they use that to set the stage or set the environment? Because I know setting is so important when they talk about, using sacred medicines or even therapy.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I feel like it depends on what we're listening to. And I know some songs, even from modern world, some things can help people to find that motivation and find that uplift, but not a lot of songs, especially the ones we have on the playlist we always playing, right? So definitely classical music is beautiful. Maybe even meditation music with brainwaves. Brainwave music can be very powerful as well because it allows the brain to go into different brainwave length and then the mind follows as well. So somebody who, let's say, is starting meditation in their journey, right? They're trying this practice. Using brainwave waves can be very, very good. In addition, it's like a little bit of a shortcut. So that can be useful. I'm a big supporter and I've performed a lot of sound healing for people as well. And it's a beautiful practice in itself. So anybody who also wants to experience that or try to experience changes in their body because of that music, that can be a beautiful modality to add to your routine as well. So yes, music can be powerful depending on, again, what's the context of it, what kind of beats they are. Because there was the experiments when they were freezing water with music, and if they play some hard rock, there was very weird formations, right, when they freeze it. And when they played classical music, it was forming these beautiful formations. And so I feel like that can be a beautiful addition to the practice as well. If you're doing that work and you have, like, just like you said, playing this music in the background, but something healing that can be a really good idea. Ceremonial music is beautiful. It's very different from what we know as far as regular songs. But let's say in shamanic practice, they have ikaros, and those songs are like chants that are going in the background that actually trigger the medicine to work within you.
Mhm.
So yes, there's a variety of sources, and music can be really good.
Yeah. Dr. Emoto was a good friend of mine until he passed away, but his lab, I did some research with them, or had him on a podcast during COVID, and they actually showed the COVID, when people thought about COVID and the fear, and they showed the water crystals. His book's called The Secret Life of Water, if someone's listening.
Yes.
And then but they showed this like demonic kind of looking thing, and then they put gratitude over it. You mentioned gratitude earlier, and it transformed that water crystal into a beautiful, almost angelic looking water crystal. So
I love that.
because we're 70% water, I think that's very key for doing that. So as you think about these shamanic trips and things like that, I know we've worked a lot with. I did a study with Dr. Rosenthal out of Dallas with psilocybin with PTSD victims, and some of them did not want to use psilocybin because they were afraid. And even though they use it to help people off addiction, they were afraid. So we actually encoded their brains using EEG, and then I created a series on BrainTap. We have gamma sessions that actually mimic psilocybin. People have psilocybin trips with just BrainTap. And what we mean by that is we're going to heighten their gamma experience. We're going to put them into the 66 to 88 hertz frequency, and they start to have it actually activates a part of the brain just to the right of the hippocampus, and it lights up, and that's what lights up when Buddhist people will be meditating, like the people in Wisconsin and that. So we were trying to mimic that, and we had some really phenomenal experiences. But we use BrainTap to integrate these experiences because people can have these beautiful experiences, but unfortunately, they don't know how to integrate them back in their life. How do you teach people to integrate these experiences? Because just going to a movie can be a great experience, but it's not going to be life changing. So how do you take these brief therapeutic interventions and integrate them across somebody's life?
Well, there's a lot of ways. I feel like it's going to be a deeply personal experience and looking at what they're dealing with in their life, as well as what insights they received. And that's exactly why I really love integrating the plant medicine ceremonies into life with mental health, because actually they go together very well. And right now I feel like when people are doing even a lot of that, and it may be helpful, but there is a difference between getting better and being healed. And I feel like that's what we need to also acknowledge. And some people continue doing that without integration, and they're not really healing. They are getting better, but to heal is just experience that transformation. There has to be the right time for that too. I don't feel like we can rush with that because, again, sometimes people need more time in order to understand their own lessons. I feel like for me, it's more what people give me and how I can use that from what I know. I don't think there's going to be one approach of integrating that specifically where you take this and you make it into that. But again, there's a lot of parts that are playing a part. And I'm a ketamine assisted psychotherapist as well. And utilizing that with EMDR, you spoke about hippocampus, right? And that's a powerful kind of duo that can go together very well because one is already working with neural connections internally, EMDR, and then ketamine is allowing our brain to be more flexible so we can form this new connections. And so it depends on what the person is presenting to me, but I feel like understanding, number one, what is the problem? That comes from self-awareness, but it has to be, again, it's not, even if I give the person the right insight, if they're not ready to receive it, they're not going to really being able to use it for themselves, right, to get better. So I feel like the integration part is going to be a very personalized. There's no like the right or the one kind of scheme that I'm working with. It's more about what I know about the person, how I can utilize what they receive throughout this journey.
Within BrainTap, we use a lot of light therapy. Of course, we use lights in the eyes from 0.5 to 88 hertz, and then we use lights in the ears, and we use no frequencies. So we're using frequencies and right frequencies and solfeggio frequencies, all of these things. But you're big on energy and light energy. So tell me a little bit about how you integrate light energy into your practice and how that helps people with trauma and recovery.
Yeah, so I use Pandora Star. It's a beautiful device. Lucia Star was a very clinical kind of tool that was beautiful, and it served people with cognitive function, with different, even with PMS, right, with hormone dysfunctions, with depression, with anxiety. So it allows to penetrate the retina of the eyes. We see it with the eyes closed. but it's a strobing light that allows to penetrate the retina of the eyes and affect the brain while producing the different dopamine, serotonin, different chemicals that are really good for us. But it's different frequencies that we use, whether it's for sleep or it's for of a psychedelic experience, because you can get that psychedelic experience without having to adjust anything. And that's exactly why I decided to use this machine in my practice, so that people who are not able to take the medicine, because again, this medicine, the ayahuasca mushrooms, they're not for everybody. And so we have to also acknowledge that some people may have needs. They want to experience that, but they're not able to take this medicine. And so utilizing that, and the sessions are not long, but they allow, again, people to really experience the change in themselves without having to utilize a lot of mental strength, because meditation is phenomenal, but a lot of people right now are struggling with that because we're functioning from high beta brainwaves, which is, again, almost like a survival kind of response. And so to come to alpha, theta, or delta, especially a lot of people struggle with insomnia too, is problematic. But this machine, the Pandora Star, allows to give that shock to the brain, if you will, because it's so intense and people don't expect that their mind is suspended for a little bit of time and they're able to experience that shift. And when they do, it's much easier for them to afterwards understand where we want to get to. And they are able to experience that without utilizing any machine whatsoever. And that energetic change, again, I feel like all of the things that we use that are alternative modalities have to create the experience of feeling different, because we can think different all we want, right? But to feel that, that's where shift is happening. The shift is happening in our physiology. And even if we have this change for a second, for a split second, it's still going to make an impact. It sets the tone where we can build more and more.
Right. Yeah, emotion drives behavior. So you have to have the energy in motion to get the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people have heard me say before, the reason we use retinal flashing, we don't use the intense light because it's not necessary for what we do, but we're going to use earth light. And then that way we can tune the brain to the earth frequencies, like going to the ocean, 10 hertz frequency, when you're sitting near the ocean, or going to the mountain, 7.8 hertz frequency. So we're going to use those frequencies. But the reason that happens is because the mitochondria in the eyes, you have more mitochondria in the eyes per square centimeter than in any other area of the brain, of the body. Now, the brain has the most mitochondria. So if you want to get light into the brain, and so just for the listeners that haven't maybe heard one of my other podcasts, your mitochondria's job is to absorb light energy and transmit it, and it does it as codes. So when you go out and look at sunrises and sunsets, you're literally getting codes from the sun. And that's why we call it the circadian rhythm in science. But that's the reason our temperature drops to 2 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, increases 2 degrees at night, and why we have serotonin production at different times of the day, melatonin at certain times of the day. All these things happen because of the light from the sun. So light plays a key role in how our biology works, and stress causes our cells to go into the cell danger response. So they don't rest, like breathe, like the lungs. The cells have to take in energy, transmit energy. So these kind of devices like this energy medicine that works. Now, some people can do it through healing, right? They can do it through Reiki or through massage or through other ways. So what other ways do you find energy medicine is helping to break up these patterns? Because these trauma patterns are really neurological networks that are so strong that they don't know another path. So we have to break those up, like you said. We have to shock the system and get the system to rearrange. And if we can get that one new thought in there, we know in neuroscience that the whole brain has to rewire around that new thought. So if we can get that new thought in there, what other ways have you found that help through energy medicine?
Yes, well, the Reiki energy, that's something that I do as well for people. But coming back to sound healing, I actually have done this practice in rehabs for people, in detox, not just rehabs, in detox, where people are withdrawing from opioids, meth, crack. And it was very effective for some people to even fall asleep. I've noticed that, and I call it relatively normal, right? When I'm serving community, it's like relatively normal people. And then we have this folks that are really struggling in rehabs and detoxes. And so they actually got more benefits out of it than regular folks from my experience, because they were able to go so deep. And I'm not sure if because of the parts of the brain that are affected. I know we always look at addiction and we see the brain and we're like, okay, the prefrontal cortex is, impaired, the hippocampus, insula, whatever we need to look at, right? But what if it activates the other parts of the brain better? And so when I was doing the sound healing there, people were able to receive very spiritual insights, connect with their relatives that passed on, connect with their friends that passed on. It was a very profound experience of observing what people can uncover, especially going through such severe physical discomfort. It was powerful. So this definitely, since again, every cell of our body vibrates, when we shift that with sound healing, especially if it's in a closed room, in a closed facility, the sound penetrates the body from bouncing from the wall to the wall, and it shifts that energy of the part of the body that's incoherent right now when it comes to our vibration. Because we're all, how we feel when somebody walks into the room and we feel drawn to them, or the opposite right away. We don't want to be next to that person. We sense the energy. And when the energy is incoherent, something is off, people can feel it, we can feel it, but sound healing can allow to shift that. I had people who haven't slept for days. They were able to fall asleep. They were snoring during the session. Some people had bodily aches. They were reporting that didn't have the aches anymore and it was maybe max of 25 to 30 actual minutes with the sound itself. So that was powerful. Using energy as well. Energy works. The Reiki I'm a practitioner as well. That one is powerful, but it can be harder to sense, especially when people are going through a lot. It can be a great addition to that. And again, creating that physiological change. So yeah, there's quite a few of the modalities that I utilize.
I know we have a lot of our clinics out there. We have 3,000 clinics with BrainTap using it in their clinics, and they do a lot of ketamine assisted therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And the first sessions can kind of be traumatic for people, but then as they do it, it's like, I guess, peeling away an onion until they get to the very cause. So most of them do about 10 sessions. What do you find with the ketamine treatment? What is the protocol you use?
Well, we use the tablets. We're not using intravenous. I know that one is the most effective because we kind of get in the more of the ketamine. We can really soak it in. Again, they journey with maximum of 300, 500 of the milligrams of ketamine. I actually get results from the first session when they have it. It can be traumatic, especially I've actually worked in the rehab where they use the intramuscular. And that was a very intense experience for people, but it was very profound in how they related to substances they used to use in the past. And restoring the brain with that practice is just phenomenal. With dendritic spine density, when we begin to create these new connections, it becomes like the brain becomes more not as rigid as it was, especially with, let's say, folks with treatment resistant depression.
The neuroplasticity increases, and then you have the opportunity to grow those dendrite connections and new pathways. Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, anything, if people want to establish new kind of habits, new ways of being, this is their moment. But again, if we use it and then we don't do something with it, if we don't try to use it for the best and we use the old ways, that's what's going to be strengthened as well. So I feel like if somebody is going into ketamine therapy per se sessions, whether it's microdose or actually a full-blown session, like psychedelic experience, they have to really have intention in place. Intention is everything, and not just for the sacred medicine, for ketamine. It's for every day. Intention is something that if we want to change, if we want to work on ourselves, this is something that had to be set every single day. But with ketamine especially, we have to know that we're not just going there to try it. And I feel like a lot of people are just going, well, I want to experience that. No, it's about healing. If you want to heal, you go. We don't drink cold medicine when we're not sick, right? If I'm good, I'm not just going around doing that. So the same happens with ketamine. If we want to, this is a serious substance that can really change your life. But what you do with that, it's your free will, right? Do you want to use it for the greatest good? You want to use it to change, or you just want to give it a try and then come back to the old ways? Yes, you will get an insight, but insight is nothing if you don't integrate it into your life. So again, it's being ready to take the steps towards creating new habits, creating new rituals, giving yourself new thoughts. You will already have that push, but you still have to practice that. And it's a very important step of any type of work, is having that intention and desire and knowing that I'm going to be uncomfortable. Like you've said, it can be shocking, right? I'm going to be uncomfortable, but I know that I'm willing and ready to take the steps necessary in order to shift that, in order to change.
Right. Yeah, I always tell people knowledge isn't power. Knowledge applied is power. So if you want to have personal power, you got to apply that knowledge in doing those things. Mm-hmm. So tell us, where are you at right now? Where are you located? And how can people get a hold of you to maybe learn more from you and maybe experience some of these therapies?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm in next to Fort Lauderdale, Plantation, Florida. I work for a group practice called Caring Therapist. I'm a therapist there. The ketamine assisted is separately, so if anybody is interested in that, and I can gladly give a consultation, it's free. So you can reach out to me. You can find me on Psychology Today. I have my website, Since That Life, as well as social media like Instagram, Alisa_art. And so, yes, anybody can reach out, and I will gladly connect and give whatever they may be interested in.
Okay. What have I not asked you about trauma therapy and things? I mean, you went over a lot today, but what do you think of somebody out there who's going through trauma right now that doesn't have a solution? Maybe they're not using brain tap, they're not doing anything, they're not a biohacker, they're not all these, there's a lot of opportunities out there for people, but they just stumble across this podcast and they made it this far and they're going, wow, what's my next step? What do you recommend to them?
I think doing their research to see what they feel drawn to, because I feel like, again, we all have the answers. You are the expert in your life. I'm the expert what I can provide, and that's how that collaboration happens. So I feel like listening to yourself and saying, okay, let me try to see what works for trauma, even if they put that in, Google search or whatever, just looking for different ways and seeing what they feel drawn to. See how your physiology feels, see how your being is feeling when you're looking at a certain kind of procedure or modality, and give it a shot. If we don't try, we're not able to get the solutions for that. We have to push ourselves and try different things in order to find the right kind of practice for you, because again, one approach is not going to fit all. So we have to try different things in order to navigate it. And when people say, nothing works, I've tried it all. No, you haven't. I mean, with all the respect, you haven't, because if you have tried it all, you would have found a solution already. So I feel like just giving it a shot and trying new things and not being afraid. There's nothing to lose. Where you can be if you're in that deep hole, there's nothing to lose, but there's a lot to gain if we just give ourselves this opportunity. And yes, it's going to be scary. And yes, your fear is valid, but yes, you can do it too.
Yeah. I always tell people you can always go back to what doesn't work. So their thinking is what's stopping them. Give it a try, get into that risk a little bit, and be vulnerable and go through some of these different therapies. So there's 3 questions I always like to ask my guests. One is, tell me a little bit about your morning ritual. If I was there, a little fly on the wall, watching you get up, prepare for your day, because every day is a new day, right? It's a discovery. Yes. It's different than yesterday. How does Alisa get up in the morning and get ready to take on the day?
Yes, well, I spend a little bit of time with my dogs because I sleep with them. So we have a little cuddling session. It's my favorite part of the day. Definitely not touching my phone. That's something that, and I know we all have these impulses that are unconscious because we spend, for work or pleasure, we spend so much time on it. Don't do it. And that's something that I'm also very conscious about, because I've had a period of my life where I was doing that. And whatever we use in the past, it still remains in our shadow. While we're humans, we have that shadow where all of our character defects reside. And so I'm always very conscious about it. And after the bathroom, I write my journal. I have a journal where it's gratitude, it's different goals for the day as well. I look at what I need to accomplish and different prompts. I'm actually using a journal with different prompts that I can also kind of answer different questions that I didn't think about for a while. So yes, that's something that I enjoy. And I'm breaking my fast. I'm doing intermittent fasting that changed my life entirely. And so that's when I break my fast, and I love my morning routine because of that too, because it's some delicious food and coffee.
That's awesome. Now, a lot of people don't realize that it's normal to be stressed, tired, overworked, or have problems, right? The stop that we used to use in psychology all the time when I was working with clients, to tell people to understand you need to step back and do those things. What does Alisa do when you get into those situations? Because, I mean, unless you're superhuman, you probably have those times when you feel these things happen to you. How do you reset? What during the day when you're on the fly, you've got a meeting, you've got a patient, you've got a client, you've got to go to an event, you've got to do something. How do you settle in? What's your go-to strategy?
Yes. So number one, I don't touch my phone unless I have to put something on, like relaxing music or a quick meditation. I do use a lot of somatic work because, again, physiology is everything. So if I have a very limited time, I go inwards and I just ground and I breathe and I try to remember who I am, and not that who I am is what I'm doing at the moment. So I'm taking this break. But if I'm really, really tired, then I may take a weekend or so. even more sometimes, to really disconnect from the phone, from the job, from everyone. Sometimes it's really everybody that I have in my life, even friends. I need to take that stance back. And I have a lot of plants. I have my pets, and I also love art. So for me, I love embroidery or anything with the art that allows me to, it's like a form of a meditation. And so that's for me, my recovery. I can put something on, TV playing or whatever if I need to. But naturally, I just want to disconnect from my life a little bit, from people, from normal routine, so to say, and just give myself that time to breathe and do absolutely nothing but art or connecting with whatever I have in my house. Because I feel like sanctuary is very important. So having a safe space too for yourself, and safe space meaning just you're not going to be interrupted. And I know it's hard for a lot of people because people have kids, they have responsibilities, they have multiple jobs, but it's absolutely essential, because if we don't take that time, then we're not available for these kids, for our jobs, for the clients we work with. So I feel like it's essential for everybody. But for me, yes, it's that kind of time and space that I take apart and aside from my life.
Wonderful. So let's imagine you just went through your day, everything, maybe you had a good day, a bad day, it doesn't matter, but what is your ritual that gets you into that deep sleep, where we know that deep sleep is the only time our brain opens up that glial lymphatic system, the spinal fluid
Mm-hmm.
washes over our glia cells, we refresh for the day, we reset, we replenish, we get into that parasympathetic state. Like you said, most people in that high sympathetic state. What's your
Yeah.
ritual that gets you into the best sleep state?
Yeah. So again, starting with no phone. My phone is out of my sight from 9 p.m. out. And I go to bed a little bit later than what I should, but naturally I still have a solid an hour of my self-care. My self-care consists of yoga stretch. That's 20 to 25 minutes at a time. And it's just regular. There's nothing crazy. I don't do the whole sequence, but it allows me to, again, decompress my spine, do a little bit of stretching because I sit a lot when I work. So that's the first part. And then it's my devotional. When I sit and I do prayers, I do energy work, I do a lot of those things that are more spiritual in nature. And that's another half an hour of my time. And then I just decompress with either if I have to read something or I have to do some cards or whatever I'm doing for myself as well. And so after that, my kind of routine is over. I do enjoy some scents as well, like a, candle or incense in a nutshell, because the smells are very important for that atmosphere. And again, the ritual before bed is very, very important. I feel like when we watch a lot of TV at night, we just bombard ourselves with more information, which we don't need, especially after a busy day. So yes, for me, it's again solitude, stretching, and being on my knees, my devotional.
Great. Now let's imagine I have a time machine, and you and I are in it, and we're traveling to the future. It's your future. Tell us a little bit about what's up for Alisa. Where will we find her in the future? What's your plans?
Yes.
Going.
So it's going to be on a mountain in Puerto Rico. There's going to be this little place very, very far from everybody. So that's the place I want. That Puerto Rico is something that just changed my life, and I consider it the place where I want to be in as soon as possible, but when life will allow. So this is going to be the place, and hopefully doing the work that I'm doing right now, whether creating space for people to come and do maybe a ceremony or have that kind of retreat, or just work on the computer too, because thankfully we have the telehealth right now, which also helped the world heal. I feel like that's a great opportunity for us to actually do this work remotely. So yeah, that's where I'm going to be at.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I bought 88 acres here in New Bern next to the river. We have 300 yards of riverfront. Dolphins swim out there, and I'm building a healing retreat center because that's what I'm going to be doing in the future, bringing people out instead of traveling so much like I do now and speaking. I'll have people come to me, and then I'll bring people like yourself in that can do those ceremonies, because I'm not a ceremonial teacher, but I love the experience. I want to learn more about it, obviously, and
Yes.
I've done the science behind it, but I haven't done a lot, for myself, just because I don't have. I went through my trauma. I was brought up Catholic, so there's some things that happen there. I call myself a recovering Catholic.
Oh my God.
But in the process, of this conversation, I think hopefully, if you've listened this far, you understand that Alisa's been there. She's done that. She's been through it. She's given us some really great insights here. Something to take away, go learn from. Again, knowledge is power when it's applied. So take action, go research her, find out if you're in the area of Fort Lauderdale and you want to reach out to her, please do that. But is there anything I forgot to ask you about that you feel like, hey, inside that, or anything you want to reinforce before we end the podcast today?
Yes. Well, just to everybody who's listening, I feel like learning about yourself and who you are and what's going on inside, just becoming more aware of what you may need and what you are going through currently. I feel like that's the first step. So if anybody is on a search on this journey, definitely learn more about yourself through a variety of tools that we currently have available, and especially with the brain tap, just like you're providing, right? It's powerful. All of this is such powerful experiences that you can get. So yeah, just learn about yourself.
That's awesome. Now, a mentor of mine told me when I was like 24 years old, and I was just divorced at that time. I've been married now for 36 years, but that marriage had ended, and I thought, I'm never going to find love again, and nothing's ever going to work, and all these kind of things were happening. He says, nothing is ever permanent. There's only one constant in the known universe: change. So you can either change, or you can let the universe change you, because something's going to move you. Something's going to happen. You're not going to stay stuck in that spot. If not, you're going to basically atrophy and die. So bring that energy in. Find out what your northern star is. What motivates you? What brings your energy to life? Use some of the technologies we talked about here on this podcast. Get going. And as I say at these podcasts, that we're on a mission to better a billion brains. So if you've listened this far in the podcast, it's your brain we're talking to. So take action. Let's better your brain, because I know that when we better your brain, you better the brains around you, and then the community, and then the world. We're only going to change the world if we change ourselves first. So thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right, Brain Fitness Nation, let's go ahead and like and share this. If you liked what you heard, please like below. Share this with your family members, your friends, your coworkers. But remember, only share it with people with a brain, because we're out to better a billion brains. So again, this is your host, Dr. Patrick Porter, and Alisa, thank you for being on the podcast, sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. And until next time, keep smiling, keep growing, keep your energy glowing. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our mission to better a billion brains. Follow at Dr. Patrick Porter on social media for updates, and remember to practice brain fitness every day.